afterwards.
Yeah, still one or two joining actually.
Okay, right. Tell me when it stops and then we'll get started. Thank you for everyone for being on time. We'll start when I finish my cup of tea.
We're up to 20 and there's nobody in the waiting room at the moment.
Okay. Well, there's about half an inch of tea. Done. Right. Let's get started. So, hi everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm just going to try and get onto the actual slide deck. Which is here. No, that's not. Still can't get to it. All right, here we go. Right, sorry about that. Hello, everybody. So, this is the Frontline Workers briefing on fuel poverty for Fuel Poverty Awareness Day, which is an initiative of the National Energy Action charity, which is very close to our hearts. If this isn't what you meant to come to, then feel free to leave, but hopefully it is, and we'll crack on. So, I am Joanna Howard. I'm from 361 Energy. We cover North Devon and Torridge. I think some of our attendees today are from other parts of Devon. We've also got Matthew Axe here from Exeter Community Energy, and Richard, who's our guest presenter, who's worked with us on a health initiative and energy initiative. Richard's from Health Innovation Southwest. So we are your hosts. What we're going to do today is just briefly introduce ourselves, and then I'm going to do a 20 minutes on fuel poverty, the basics, and what we do about it. Then we've got a quick video that fortunately was made by the BBC, not us, so it's quite good quality. And then we'll have 10 minutes from Richard on the programme that we've run in the last 12 months, focusing on medical referrals into energy visits. And then back to me for 10 minutes on what frontline workers can do to help, and then some time for questions and answers. So there's no time in there for everybody to kind of introduce themselves to each other. You might be relieved to know, but if you would like to use the chat to say who you are and where you're from, that would be lovely. And as we go through, again, I'm going to not stop for questions until the end. So if anything occurs to you that you would like us to cover at the end, please bung that in the chat box and Matthew will be on it and be able to answer those questions at the end. So without further ado, let's crack on. Fuel poverty. Fuel Poverty Awareness Day is an initiative of the National Energy Action charity. And really just to draw attention to the fact that there's a lot of people in this country who are suffering, and even more than before since the fuel poverty crisis, which began about 2 years ago. So really, I mean, what is fuel poverty? The NEA's definition of it is where a household is needing to spend more than 10% of their income just to maintain a satisfactory level of warmth in their home. Now, there are other definitions. The government uses a different one, but this one is the one that we will go with. And when you use that definition, you find that there are actually 6.3 million households across the UK that are in fuel poverty in that definition. That's an awful lot of people. About 11 million adults would self-report that they're struggling with their energy bills. And we know that energy debt, which has built up over the period of the crisis, is now at absolute record levels, and that contributes to ongoing fuel poverty among our population. So really, what makes it happen? It's the trifecta of low incomes, rising energy prices, and hard to heat homes. And what that means is that the poorest people in the worst homes end up paying for the most energy because it's all leaving the house through the walls, the roof, the floor, and the windows and the doors. Meanwhile, the price of putting that energy into the house has been rising. As you can see from the middle chart, over 4 years, we're at a position where the average household energy bill is double what it was before, in fact, double what it was in about 2 years ago. So from October 2021 to January 2024, the average household bill has doubled from around 1,000 to around 2,000 a year. So there's the reasons. And if I just have a look at some of the key risk factors for like who is going to be in fuel poverty, we've identified about 10 risk factors, which do tend to mean that people are more likely to be suffering in fuel poverty. I'm not going to go into all of these in detail, but just very briefly, if you are on a fixed income or low income, retired, there's not much you can do about how much money is coming in. Obviously, then when your prices go up and all of your outgoings go up, it starts to be a struggle. So that's one key one. Poor health is another one. Physical and mental health all create additional needs, which create additional energy needs, which makes it more likely for people to be in fuel poverty. The third one, hard to heat homes, is absolutely huge. If you are pouring energy into your home to try and heat it, and it's underheated, it's badly ventilated, it's poorly insulated, especially, it's extremely difficult to keep warm in that home. And that's why the NEA uses the definition of how much it costs you to heat your home to a satisfactory level. We're not talking about people sitting in 23 degrees 24/7, but we're talking about just a comfortable and healthy level of heating in the home, and trying to keep that in is a struggle for many homes. Which brings us on to private tenants, because for people who are not homeowners, they have a lot less control of how their home functions in an energy performance way. So if you don't have the means to get a grant yourself, or to add insulation to your home, you're at the mercy of a landlord, and that's not always a nice place to be. Obviously, there are good landlords, but there's also a lot of properties that are privately rented, which we don't think are adequate for the needs of the people living in them. The fifth one is off the gas grid. So gas central heating is by far the cheapest and most efficient way to heat homes in this country. And for people, which is a lot of rural people in the Devon area, who are not on the gas grid, having to buy oil or LPG or have all electric heating is a much, much more expensive way to have to heat your home, and that will definitely contribute to the fuel poverty risk for those homes. Then there's a few other things. Life events after a bereavement or a divorce. A lot of people do struggle. Sometimes the remaining partner after a bereavement doesn't actually have any experience of managing bills. That's one thing, but also they have a sudden change to their income and everything's new. So that's a key risk point, and household breakups for other reasons as well. Digital exclusion people who've not got access to finding the best tariffs or all of the discounts they should be entitled to, can just be a bit invisible and maybe miss out on things. Prepayment meters carries a great risk. Obviously, there's a risk that your energy is just switched off if you can't top it up, and the need to budget is much greater for people on prepayment meters, and that can be a challenge. Others may have medical equipment or additional needs that mean they have to do lots of laundry or charge up electric wheelchairs or run electric medical equipment in the home, and that's all extra demand which has to be financed from somewhere. And then drug and alcohol dependency, which just makes everything more of a challenge for some people. So where you're dealing with people in these kind of situations, just keep your eyes open, because energy poverty and struggles with bills is very likely to be a factor in what they're having to deal with. So, and then what happens? Well, we all know, people self-ration their energy use. They'll turn the heating down maybe to an unsafe level. They won't use it at all. We come across lots of people who say, I'm not putting the heating on this winter, can't afford it. They keep their home at a dangerously low temperature, and it's dangerous especially if they have medical issues like respiratory problems, circulatory problems, a whole host of medical conditions that really need someone to be properly warm in order to be comfortable and manage pain and other symptoms. So cold homes, not good for people who are not well. We've seen people using dangerous practices for heating as an alternative to using the heating that's installed. So bringing patio heaters inside, lighting fires where you shouldn't be lighting fires, using candles to try and get an extra half a degree of heat into your room, all sorts of things which people will turn to if they're really struggling. Obviously, being unable to afford both your energy bills and food and other essentials, so the dreaded heat or eat conundrum is very, very real and very common. So people are juggling. They're juggling between energy use and other things that are making demands on their wallets, and things slip, other bills and other commitments, and it becomes extremely difficult. And the last point on here, I would say, this does disproportionately affect people who have to be at home. So, people who have disabilities or illnesses or other reasons why they spend most of their time at home, could be economic reasons. The more time you spend in your home, the more time you have to heat your home. So those poorest people might find that their demands for energy and the need to heat the home is higher than people with more generous incomes who are out at work during the day, or school during the day or whatever. So it really does hit the poorest and the least well off and the more vulnerable harder than the rest of the population. Just check where I am on time. Okay, so not so far. So the community energy organisations across Devon are here to help with these situations, which is great. And the sort of things that we can do to help people who are struggling are we can help them deal with their suppliers. So very often we don't get called in until it's quite late in the day and people have got debt collection letters and debt has built up. But even before that, we can help with metering issues, with ensuring people are on the right tariffs, switching suppliers, setting up payment plans, getting people onto the right kind of payment method, all of those kind of things, but also dealing with debt, trying to get help with energy debt, trying to make referrals for further help for writing off some of that debt if possible, understanding situations and advocating for people with their energy supplier. So that's one set of things we do. We offer for free small measures like light bulbs, radiator reflectors, draft proofing strips, just to try and help a little bit with keeping the energy in the home. And we offer a whole menu of behavioral advice to help people understand why energy use in the home is so high, what they can do safely to cut down to a reasonable level and try and keep the bills in check. We can look at incomes and refer for benefit checks or do easy benefit checks ourselves, or in some cases help with benefit applications, which could make a big difference. We can refer to emergency support funds like the Household Support Fund and other grants that we can try and tap into to help people with specific needs. And we can offer, usually we can offer prepayment top-up vouchers to help tide people over in an emergency. So all of those kind of things help a lot. In emergencies, where we have a lot of people come to us who've got broken boilers, no heat situations, or have never had central heating, and we can help with things like emergency radiators, heated throws to keep the person warm rather than heating the space if there is no heating for heating the space. And we can refer into schemes for fixing broken boilers or replacing broken boilers if people qualify according to the eligibility criteria for those. Looking more widely, we can refer into schemes to provide grant funding, again, subject to eligibility, but for loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, underfloor insulation, occasionally solar panels, air source heat pumps, renewable heat sources, new heating sources, high heat retention storage heaters, for example. So we're quite expert at navigating the maze of grant eligibility and signposting people or referring people to where they might actually be able to get some bigger help. And finally, we do a range of wider support. We will refer people on for well-being needs, fire safety checks. We'll try and secure new white goods, whole raft of things which people might need that are slightly outside of the energy category, but we try to help where we can. So the kind of, just very briefly, here's some illustrations of some of the small measures that we can offer and some of the kind of behavioral advice that we can offer, just to help people understand, well, what might be eating the power. If you've got your immersion heater on 24 hours a day, for example, it's unnecessary because the water will be heated and stay heated, especially if we give you an immersion tank jacket to keep that heat in there. But we do find many people who've just got that immersion just switched on and it doesn't have a timer on it, doesn't have a thermostat on it. It's just pouring energy into heating water when it's not necessarily being used. Electric showers are another one. They're extremely expensive to run, and one of the best pieces of advice you can have is cut down the length of time you spend in the shower, especially if it is an electric shower, which is heating the water on demand rather than a mixer shower, taking it from the hot water tank. So those are the kind of things that we offer there. And for the larger energy measures, again, where does the heat go? Most of it goes out through the walls. The next biggest culprit is the roof, and then floor and drafts in the house and windows. So we try where we can identify that people have not got enough loft insulation, or they haven't got cavity wall insulation and they could have. Those are fairly easy and economical ways to keep a lot more of the heat in the house. And so we refer an awful lot of people into schemes for funding for this kind of insulation. And the bigger, more expensive ones like solid wall insulation and solar PV and first-time central heating, again, we can sometimes achieve grants for those, but they're quite hard to come by. But we do know where to go, and we get these for anybody that we can. So I'm going to try and show you an energy advice visit. Bear with. Hope this works. Let's try it again. Right, new share. Advanced video share. Is it going to work? Everybody cross your fingers.
Winter in North Devon. On days like this, it's best to stay indoors, hopefully in the warm.
Good morning, Mr. Adams.
Yes.
My name is Mel.
Mel Ayers is an energy advisor who's been sent to visit Roger Adams by his GP.
I understand you've got some health conditions that you feel the cold more.
The pensioner takes 15 tablets a day for a variety of health problems, including asthma.
These are energy efficient light bulbs.
Yeah.
Basically, if you had LED light bulbs throughout the whole house, you would save money annually.
She hopes to improve his health by warming his home and cutting his bills. Roger has 6 children and 20 grandchildren and has been married to Carol for over 50 years. They have £45 a week to spend on food.
She buys everything in the reduced section.
I go look for the bargains. That's what I do. I look for the bargains. With the money we got, we spread it as best as we can, and that's it. It don't allow for days out or holidays or abroad like that, but we get by. There's a lot of people worse off than us.
Have a nice weekend.
Mel departs with a promise to return to help the couple claim a benefit they may be entitled to. She's off to another client. GPs in northern Devon have identified hundreds of people like Roger who have respiratory problems and live in fuel poverty. A year-long scheme sees them visited by advisors who try to improve each home's energy efficiency.
Living in cold, damp, dark homes is really bad for you if you've got pre-existing respiratory illness. In this severe group, they often have medical devices that need electricity, such as oxygen concentrators, which they can't afford not to run. And so that's one of the reasons why we chose this population.
Lots of old, poorly insulated homes combined with low incomes means that fuel poverty levels are higher in Devon than nationwide. Mel Ayers has been shocked by some of what she's seen.
I've been in houses where they've got a selection of candles and they're telling me that that's where they get their heat from. They've refused to open their post because they're too scared to, so they just don't put the heating on.
Why won't they open their post?
Because they're too scared to find out what their energy bill's going to be.
Is it hard?
Yes. I know it's, health is not something that we can all control, but certainly having the heating on, we should be able to do that.
The energy advisors even run a curtain bank, taking donated curtains, lining them if necessary, and hanging them in clients' homes to prevent heat loss.
Most people's grandparents used to have curtains across their door, and we're kind of going back in time to do that. And it's a cost-effective way of somebody being able to reduce drafts in their home.
Mel's final task today is to hang curtains in Michael and Lynn's home.
I understand you need some curtains.
They both have mobility problems. Lynn in particular feels the cold. They bought the curtains themselves. They aren't lined, but they'll do until Mel can swap them. A small improvement in the much bigger battle for health and well-being. Michael Buchanan, BBC News, Devon.
Right. Okay. Did that work? Yeah. Okay, great. Good job. Right, let me get back to the other deck. Basic. And this one. And I can hand you to a minute when I find the slideshow thing. I need to close this floating thing. Hide video panel. Right. Are we back on?
Yep, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, right. So just introducing you to Richard from the Health Innovation Southwest, who was involved in that GP-led program that we just heard about on the BBC clip. So over to you, Richard. You get 10 minutes.
Marvellous.
Now.
Morning, everyone. I don't know whether you've got the same, but I'm looking out my window here and the snow's coming down. So it seems like a perfect opportunity to talk about fuel poverty awareness. So this programme, first off, I'm going to say we, but most of the work was done by 361 and the PCNs. So you'll notice that also the Southwest Academic Health Science Network, we've changed our name into Health Innovation Southwest. It wasn't our choice, it's a national thing, but we're here to support NHS, academia, industry, try and bridge the gap between those. So my background is data analysis, and what I was trying to do here was to support the team to try and target those individuals that had a clinical risk and fuel poverty risk. So if we move on to the next slide.
That
if you can.
should work. There we go. Yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry.
So this is a map of the percentage of households. So the way we do this is geographically, we've got these things called output areas and then lower super output areas. Just imagine them, they're the same number of people within those areas. So the bigger the area, the more sparsely populated it is. So when we look at this national map, you'll see lots of dark areas, which is low risk of fuel poverty, as in there's a smaller number of houses within that area that are at risk of fuel poverty. And the more rural areas become greener and yellower across the patch. And if you look down in the West Country, you'll see that we are majority green and yellow across there. So the more rural, the more risk there is of fuel poverty, but there are still urban centres of fuel poverty. So this balance between the income and the quality of the housing is crucial there. So if you move on to the next one. So what we got here is we took a cohort. This is made up data, which I'm presenting here. It's just randomly selected postcodes. But essentially what we did was we asked the PCNs to come up with their respiratory high risk list. Now, obviously, it's not just respiratory. Cardiovascular is another issue. There's plenty, but the focus of this program was respiratory first off. So it'll be things, triple therapy and the likes. But they pick their clinical cohort and they produce a list of patients, the age of the patient and the postcode. We then link that postcode to the Office of National Statistics fuel poverty risk work. And we say, okay, if I ordered that list by clinical risk and fuel poverty risk, the ones in that second chart there, you see the ones with the darker dots versus the ones with the whiter dots or pinker dots. The pinker dots are the ones in areas of lower fuel poverty risk. So they've still all got, let's say they've got exactly the same clinical risk, but we're focusing first on those ones who have clinical risk and live in an area of high risk of fuel poverty. So if we move, in fact, sorry, on the last chart 3 there, we can see, so that's Barnstable. And what you'll find is in the older parts of towns, you have the lower quality, not lower quality housing, but lower efficiency, energy efficiency housing. At the bottom, you can just about see it at the bottom left-hand corner of chart 3 is an area called Fremington, which has a lot of new housing. So they have much lower levels of fuel poverty risk. It might have the same average income overall, but their housing stock is more efficient. So we move on to the next one. Now, the result of this is, well, first off, were we targeting the right people? So if you are aware of the indices of multiple deprivation, you might recognize that IMD decile. What we're talking about is those lower numbers on the left-hand chart, 1 through to 10. So 1 means it's the most deprived 10% of the areas in the country. 10, the least deprived. So the blue bars are the percentage of the houses that we actually contacted, and you'll see the vast majority lie within 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're targeting the areas of more deprivation, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve. The benefit of this, what I should say, is those red bars on there, that is Devon, 1 Northern Devon, so it's Torridge and North Devon local authorities. You can see that there are higher levels of households with the median, the middle part of deprivation, lower down the bottom. So we're over targeting those with more deprivation, which is exactly what we wanted to do. The benefit, so you can see here that the benefit spreads out. A lot of people, I don't know, getting around about 700, 800 on average financial gain. I think it's annual financial gain, Joe, is that right? Might be.
Not exactly.
It might be a mix. Okay.
Yeah, it's a mix actually, because some of those, the higher ones, were got new boilers. So
right. So the ones on, exactly. So ones on the right hand side may not be annual, but they are getting a big benefit. So those will be some retrofit, boiler changes, but the vast majority are seeing around about £700 benefit. If you move on to the next one. So here we've got, what we're also trying to do is pick out the topics within the Home Energy Advisors case notes. Now, what we found was it's not just about the energy efficiency. The other things that they were doing, the advisors, when they were going to homes, was they were making these contacts to other services. Something really simple like the Priority Services Register. A lot of these patients who are identified are at high risk, weren't even known to the energy organisations that they had medical devices at home. This is a major need that we should actually be telling people. We need to get these people back on if there's ever an energy cut around. So this was just one of the topics which came up, that word cloud on the left hand side, which shows you this was around the funds, the grants that were available. So we can see that there was work being done to complete HSSF, which is the
Household Support Fund.
Thank you. So supporting them, fill in those forms, making sure they got those funds through to their into their accounts. The case study I'll let you read through. Whilst you're reading through that, I'll also mention this. One of the things is we often signpost people, but actually a bit more, I don't want to call it hand-holding, but doing a bit more and actually being a bit more proactive gives us greater benefit. We could have signposted some of these people, 361 could have signposted these people to the funds available, to the grants available, but it's not nearly as good as supporting them fill in those forms. And I'm sure Joe has many examples of this, but we have people with low literacy. So how we'd expect them to fill in those forms, we've already talked about the digital inequity, so access to broadband, access to those. How are people expected to fill in those things online? So I think that's about my time up.
All right. Thank you, Richard. I'll just talk a little bit about Mr. and Mrs. G actually, because this was a very typical challenge for us. It was a private rented bungalow. It's a large bungalow, and it turned out that it's actually a council tax band E, because it is a large bungalow. But that council tax band E took it out of eligibility for the loft insulation, which it needed. It had an EPC which said it was D, which is average for the UK's housing stock in terms of its energy efficiency. But it wasn't correct, because the EPC said it had loft insulation, which it didn't have. So it was, it was very difficult to get funding for this couple. And in the end, we ended up using some of the funding that came to us from the PCNs to pay for the loft insulation to be done, because there were no grant schemes that would actually help in this particular instance due to the council tax banding and the fact that it was a private rental. So anyway, we got that done. We got them their heated throws. we gave them some behavioural advice, and we helped them with an attendance allowance application. And the total benefit to this couple was quite high as a result of that initial visit, which was commissioned for us by the GP's wellbeing team. So we are running to time, which is great news, and we'll move back on to why you're here. So really the purpose of having this webinar was for us to be able to make sure that frontline workers who are out and about and seeing people who need this kind of energy support know what to do about it. So I've put this together to say, well, what's your role in all of this? So first thing really is to make sure that the indicators of fuel poverty and the risk factors, you spot them, you know what they are. When you see them, something goes off in your head and you think, right, okay, something could be done to help these people. We have energy advice teams, let's use them. So if you're in a home and it just feels cold, well, that's a pretty obvious indicator that nobody wants to sit in the cold if they don't have to. Also, what's very, very obvious is a poorly heated house. People will tend to sort of slam the windows shut, which means it's also a poorly ventilated house. And both of those things mean that you're going to start getting damp. Condensation is going to make things damp. Harmful mold is going to start growing. And when you see those kind of things, you know that something really needs to be done to help that household. People may be wearing lots of clothes indoors, not eating well. That's something that might take a bit of detective work to find out, but it's worth understanding what the situation is. People who aren't heating their homes will stay in bed. They'll go to bed really early and they'll try not to get up out of bed until really late in the morning, and try and minimize the time where they need to actually heat the space that they're in. If they have respiratory problems, they won't be getting better. So asthma might be getting worse. Coughs won't be going away. More severe respiratory conditions will not improve if you're living in a cold and damp home. So watch out for that. People often will not understand their energy bills. They might mention that they don't understand why it's so high, and there may be a good reason, that can be fixed why it's high. And we can certainly help people to understand and correct any errors, and understand where the usage is coming from if it is a genuine bill. People will start to isolate more, to slow down and have less social interaction, and their mental health will certainly worsen if they're under stress from not being able to manage bills. And one of the key things that we notice is residents don't answer the phone. We saw in the BBC clip, people aren't opening their mail because they're worried what red bills might be in there. But people who are under financial stress also don't tend to answer the phone for fear of what might be on the end of it. So we very often need to text people before and say who we are before we can call them, because they will not answer the phone to unknown numbers. So on the right hand side of the screen is who to go to depending on where you are in Devon. So I'm sorry, it's a bit of a messy chart, but the council areas in Devon, this was the best map I could find of them. So if you are in North Devon or Torridge, then we in 361 Community Energy can help you. If you're in East Devon, Mid Devon, Exeter, Teignbridge or Torbay, then Exeter Community Energy can help you. If you're in West Devon, you should contact Tamar Energy Community. If you're in Plymouth itself, Plymouth Energy Community. And if you're in the South Hams, then South Dartmoor Community Energy. So all of those teams will provide a very similar service of energy visits funded by the grants that we managed to secure to keep us going. And all of the advice that I've talked about will be available from any of us. And there's also the LEAP option. So the Local Energy Advice Partnership is a funded scheme a sort of national scheme, but we are all involved in providing LEAP visits in our various areas. So it is possible to refer directly into LEAP, and then LEAP will get the resident to the right community energy team to provide a visit. So either way, it works. We kind of prefer that you come straight to us, but LEAP is an option. And this is, I think, more or less my final slide. So who do we want to hear from? This is a non-exclusive list, but anybody really. Home care providers, community groups, parts of the health service, Age UK, memory cafes, friends and families, hospital teams, citizens advice, housing, fire service, really anybody. We're not picky. If you are working at the front line with people who need our kind of help, then we would like you to refer to us. And we'll send this deck out, and I've put the referral links to the various forms from each of the teams there, and they will work when you have it as a PowerPoint. So I think we are ahead of time, which is great, and we can move on to see whether we've got any questions or any discussion. If not, we can give you some time back. So Matthew.
Yeah, no questions in the chat so far. So
if you want to discuss anything, or you can either wave like that, or you can use the raise your hand function, which I can't temporarily see, but Helen Wareham has got a hand up.
Yeah.
Oh, hi everybody. It's been really helpful. Thank you very much. I'm not sure whether this is a question mainly for Richard or for Joanna, but I was really interested in your alignment of the data with your patient cohort and the fuel poverty area. We actually tried to do something very similar in Littleham, which is a part of Exmouth, through the population health management programme. But we started in late 2019, so it got derailed in 2020 for obvious reasons. And then so many staff changed that we just haven't picked it up. We were actually trying to look at clinical patients with mental health problems.
Yeah.
I just wondered, it was such a powerful message. Do you have a report that it would be possible to share that I could take back to people now and see if we could do something similar again?
Absolutely. So One Northern Devon have the report. I'm not sure whether it's actually up on their website, but we can certainly get hold of it for you. Remind me of the GP who was involved in it, because I know his name.
He was Barry Coakley, but he's moved on.
So Barry moved on, but there was another chap, the population health management fellow. I want to say.
It was definitely Barry when we were doing it in 2019, and then he got so busy during the pandemic that it was parked, and then he moved, so we didn't start again.
What the reason why I'm saying it might be better to put a clinical contact in touch with Ollie Hassel, who's the GP up in Barnstable, who essentially was, he wasn't leading because it was 4 PCNs, but Ollie will be able to. It really works when it's clinically led.
I can imagine. Okay, thank you.
Do you want to put your email address in the chat, and then I can ping you a message?
Yes, thank you.
What else have we got in the anything in the chat? Somebody's commenting on the curtains. Yes, it is a great shame that it's necessary, isn't it? But also, it can be a very effective way to help, and it's complicated to do, and it's not cheap, but thermally lined curtains can make a big difference. And a lot of people have no curtains at all, never mind thermally lined ones. A lot of people have no carpets at all, which is another big factor in keeping a home warm. Fortunately, we can now often access carpets through either the through the household support funding, actually. Any more?
We see quite a bit of that down Exeter and East Devon as well now. Homes with no carpets and you know, limited furnishings when people have been moved around.
Okay, he's got a spinal call for oh yeah, turntable. Somebody tell us about turntable. I really wish we had a turntable equivalent in Northern Devon. Can somebody
Ooh.
explain what turntable is?
Well, yeah, Turntable's a charity in Exeter. It actually had just faltered but restarted. Not quite sure how they managed to get their funding back. They will only accept referrals in from a accepted referral charity or agency. So for a small amount of money, they will provide second-hand furniture for somebody who's got nothing. I mean, this is quite often people that have formerly been homeless and been rehoused, situations like that. The question was actually about rugs. I don't actually know where they are with rugs and carpets. They've certainly, because they faltered in about July, I think, they've said that they're short of second-hand white goods, which they'll take in as well, and they can offer one white good per property. But I think perhaps the most important thing is that, I mean, they have a website that you can find out more detail, because I haven't got that quickly to hand. But a vulnerable client can't simply go to them themselves. It's not like a second-hand store or a charity shop. You actually have to have a referral agency fill in the form and put that person into the scheme.
It's like a food bank for furniture, basically.
It's more like a furniture. Yeah, it's more like the food bank. They do they extend just about into part of mid Devon, but that's about as far north as they go. I've no idea if there's. I mean, there's things like Refurnish, isn't there? But that's a slightly different model. That's more the general public.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything up here that does that. And I really, really would love it if we did. Any budding social entrepreneurs would like to kick it off, that'd be great. Any more?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, Joe. Just while there's quite a varied audience here. I mean, one of the other parts of their model is they will get work doing the deliveries back to people that have perhaps been homeless or not had jobs for ages. So they try and make a complete sort of social enterprise and help with employment as well. So
it's a great model. I hope they continue to thrive.
Yeah, sorry.
Any more thoughts, questions, comments? Sorry, food bank. There's a question about food banks. In the past, we have had limits on how often we could send people to food banks, but at the moment, I don't know whether formally or informally, I don't think that that is being limited at the moment. I may be wrong about that, but I think basically it's fairly unlimited at the moment. Obviously, that will be subject to funding being available. Things could change, but as I understand it, that's not a limitation currently, where we are anyway.
Right. So yeah, part of the question is about the fuel voucher top-ups. They do get limited, but we often have certainly in our part of the world, we've got a couple of different schemes, which gives us a little bit more flexibility, but we've certainly got a limit of 3 sets of vouchers, I think, on one of them.
Residents can currently refer themselves for fuel vouchers to the Citizens Advice, a direct request from the resident themselves to Citizens Advice, and that's a good route at the moment, but sometimes they run out of money, but at the moment they have it. I think we're just about to get a new, quite generous fuel voucher top-up scheme via Centre for Sustainable Energy. It's about to come on stream.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, Catherine, for the information on Refurnish. Any more thoughts? Thank you. Well, if not, then I think we'll close down and leave it there. Thank you very much for attending. It's been our pleasure to explain to you what we can do, and we will send out the deck, make the recording available, and in there you'll find the referral links to all of the teams. We hope you've enjoyed it, hope you've learned something, and even more, we hope that you can help us reach the people that we need to reach who are really in need. So thank you very much for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.